Alright, it's been a while since I did a video, so I thought I'd go ahead and continue on with the series that we're doing on budget knives. So if you want, you can check out the first two videos where I did two other knives that are pretty similar in nature to one another, but from two different brands. This knife is going to actually be another Civivi. So the last video I did was on a Civivi Backlash. This one's going to be on the Civivi Praxis. So one of the first things you're going to notice about this knife is the blade looks different. This is a very nice looking blade. It's made out of 110 layer Damascus steel. Now there's a little bit of secrecy, if you will, about what kind of steel is used in this Damascus by Civivi. So the first thing is that it's a stainless Damascus, which is pretty rare. You don't usually see stainless Damascus. So that's kind of cool. From what I can understand, it's pretty commonly believed that they use the 9 CR18 MOV as their base steel, but there's really nothing out there about what the other steel is in this. Now I will say that from everything I've read, it's supposed to be pretty decent. But then again, I had read the same thing about their regular 9 CR18 MOV, and I didn't have that experience with it being a decent steel. So this one is kind of my Sunday go to church knife, so I don't use it a lot. It's mostly just a pretty knife that I carry around because it looks nice. So I can't really speak too much to the quality of the steel, but I can speak to the quality of the build. Like any other Civivi, this thing has a great build quality. Very solid, extremely smooth. So the action is on that ball bearing action, the same way that the other Civivi that I showed you, the Backlash, is. The Praxis obviously has a much wider blade here, kind of a spear point style here. It does have a little bit of a swedge or false edge on the back, but you can see it's not much. It's very minor, mostly just aesthetic. Does have a little bit of jimping here on the back, not a whole lot as well there, but just a little bit so that you can get some grip there. And like all the Civivis, it does have some jimping here on the liner lock as well, so you can see that. It is all black, the one that I got, so the liner lock, or the liner itself, is not a different color. The clip itself is black as well, so it's an all black handle. G10, so it's still got that same kind of grip that we talked about in the last video with the Backlash. So it's grippy. It gives you enough grip that you're not struggling to hold on to it, but it's also not aggressive enough to wear out a pocket, which is nice. Obviously, I know if you've been around knives much, you've probably experienced some of those G10 knives where they're so aggressive that they just shred your pocket, which feels good in the hand. You know you're not going to lose it, but you wear out pockets really fast. As far as some of the dimensions and statistics of the knife here, it is a 3 3/4 inch blade, just a little under 8.5 overall. So it's a pretty large knife. You can see I have big hands, and this thing fills out your hand pretty good. Definitely a larger knife. But if you're in one of those states that has a length limit, a lot of times those are like 4 inches. This thing will fall under that 4-inch mark for the blade. So still should be legal to carry in most states, I believe. Although I don't know all the knife laws, so you have to be aware of what your state's knife law is. Really, I don't have a lot to say about this one outside of what I've already said about the Backlash. It still has the deep carry pocket clip, which I like, so you don't have a whole bunch of your knife sticking out when you're using that. So you can see there that is that's the deep carry pocket clip, goes right up to the edge of the knife, or the bottom of the knife here. Again, this one is reversible for left or right hand carry. The clip is, but not, you can't switch it to tip up or tip down. So once again, you're kind of stuck carrying it with the tip up. So if you're somebody who doesn't like that, you're kind of out of luck with this knife. Again, the action is extremely smooth on this, like it is with any Civivi that I've used so far. The ball bearing action is really smooth. Now this is a much larger, heavier blade than the Backlash, like significantly heavier. So even though it's smooth, it does not fling out with quite the same amount of authority that the Backlash does. You got to put a little more effort into it just because of how much steel you're moving. That's a heavy blade. Um, I mean, for the price, again, this is Damascus, so it's quite a bit more expensive. I think I said the backlash was somewhere around 32, 35, something like that when I bought it, which of course now I think they're higher than that. You probably find them closer to 40. This thing when I bought it was somewhere around the 75, 72 to 75 mark. Um, so, it's almost twice as expensive, but for a Damascus knife, it's still a really cheap option. And if you like the look of that pattern, which I love on the knife, it's worth that price. Like I said, everything I've heard, the steel holds up well. I have not put that to the test. Maybe one of these days I will, but I hate to mess up such a pretty blade. I know that sounds dumb because a knife is meant to be a utilitarian tool, right? You're supposed to use it. But if you're somebody who collects knives like I do and like many of us do, you have enough knives that there's those one or two in your collection that you really don't utilize much. They're just for looks, and this is kind of one of those. But if you're looking for a budget option on a Damascus knife, Civivi's always in the budget line compared to other knives of their style. This is a good option, and I definitely would recommend it. Now they do make their Damascus knives. It's not just the Praxis. They make it in other versions. In fact, they do have a Damascus Backlash. In hindsight, part of me wishes I had gotten that instead of the Praxis, but I already had a Backlash, so I wanted something different. But I do like the blade style a lot better on the Backlash, I have to admit. After having held it and played with it, this is nice, but it is a much heavier blade. So I feel like if I was going to use a blade, this one makes more sense because it's so much heavier. I think it would take more of a beating, and the Backlash maybe would have been a better choice for something that's just to kind of look at. Of course, again, aesthetically, this thing, you have the C here symbol on it. You've got all black screws. You've even got a little bit of a lanyard hole here. So if you're somebody, I've never carried knives with a lanyard, but if you're somebody who does that, you can see that there is a small one there. You wouldn't be able to, I don't think that thing would even fit paracord, so it'd have to be a pretty thin lanyard. Just a good looking knife overall, well built, solid craftsmanship, but you got to know what you're getting. This is a budget knife, so don't expect anything more than a budget knife out of it. But for a budget knife, it's on the higher end. You're not going to find something for this price point with all these features that's really any better, in my opinion. Now, as we kind of go through this series, I mentioned pretty much all these knives that I'm reviewing are Chinese steel knives. When I get to the end, though, for those of you who just absolutely are not going to buy Chinese, which I 100% understand and even support, but if you're not going to buy Chinese knives, I am going to show you what my #1 pick for an American-made budget knife is. So if you hang in through the series to the end there, I can kind of show you an option that you can look at that honestly is going to compete on build quality pretty much with all these knives. And I would say as far as steel, probably even surpass it. It's American made and it's in the same type of bracket. And honestly, other than the build quality as far as fit, finish, and the feel, it's not quite there with these knives. It doesn't feel like a $200 knife that you're getting for a fourth of that price. But as far as actual utility and use and how well it'll hold up, I think it'll honestly probably blow all these other knives out of the water, and it is American made. So if you hang on for that, you'll see that. But this is the Civivi Praxis Damascus 110 layer stainless Damascus steel. Great knife for the price. So hopefully that helps anybody who has been kind of on the fence about whether or not they would want to go ahead and put down the money for one of the Civivi's Damascus steel knives.